What's up guys, I'm randomfrankp, and ASUS sent me out their brand new ROG Azoth Extreme gaming keyboard that from the moment I got it in, absolutely blew my expectations out of the water, and I've never been so impressed with a pre-built mass-produced gaming keyboard like I have been with this. So this new Extreme is obviously the follow-up, the big brother from the 2023 Azoth keyboard that came out just last year that I really enjoyed. But at Computex last month, ASUS revealed this new Azoth Extreme model that has some major upgrades, like an all-new case construction and materials with a carbon fiber plate, upgraded OLED screen, an 8K polling rate, wirelessly that is, and a way to adjust the gasket mount on the fly to instantly change how your keyboard feels, something I've never seen before. If any of that interests you, and there's plenty more to go over, then kick back and relax as we go in depth to check out this new ROG Azoth Extreme. So first up, getting it unboxed, it's immediately apparent this thing is an upgrade because right away, the weight at nearly 1,500 grams makes a statement. When you first look at it, it may not look drastically different, but as you look around, you start to realize this new aluminum alloy chassis with the metal frame just screams premium and attention to detail with the CNC machining, the sandblasting, and the anodizing to the frame. It all just looks stellar, and to me resembles that of like a carbon fiber look. But real quick before we move on, let's check out all we get inside the box because this is jam-packed with extras. Inside is this thick silicone and aluminum wrist rest that spans the width of the Azoth Extreme's frame. There's an additional set of taller magnetic feet to elevate its backside, both a dedicated key switch and a keycap puller for swapping out the switches, the USB-C cable and the USB dongle extender piece, a separate 8K polling rate USB receiver to take advantage of the higher polling rate. And then there's a bunch of additional silicone pins and pads for tuning the internal leaf springs and the stock stabilizers, which we'll be checking out in just a few. Now before we crack this open and take a look inside, let's do a quick roundup of the physical features. The keycaps here are a shine-through double-shot PBT set that does have this slight texture finish to avoid like fingerprint oils and smudges. And they're also a mid-height keycap, so they're not as tall as like your standard keycap set, not as thin as low profile either. This also helps cut down on key wobbles, so they're not like shifting side to side during use. Now this is minor, and Drake, if you're watching, settle down. I do wish the font they use on the keycaps was more of a minimal font to match the overall aesthetic of the keyboard that's super, clean and sleek versus that aggressive gamer font that they chose to use here. Checking out one of the cool selling points on the top right, you have this control dial built in on the side. This gives you 18 on-the-fly functions by flicking it up, down, and then vertically in to actuate. So 3 ways to interact. Then pressing the side button on the ROG logo on the dial cycles through the functions menu. So really, you have 4 separate controls here with just this knob. But it doesn't end at that, because another one of the upgrades, the OLED screen on top is now a full-color OLED touchscreen display. So you can just swipe the screen to also cycle menus in addition to the dial. And while having a full color screen is definitely more of a novelty, because, let's face it, a colored screen doesn't really add much other than just taking advantage of like the custom animations and stuff, the addition of the touchscreen is a nice bonus. Being able to hide the status bar or slide to navigate the screens is all quick and easy. Here you can do things like display the date and the time at a glance, some practical things like hardware info, so you can see your CPU usage and temps in real time. In the Armoury Crate software, you can go in and configure like what hardware it's monitoring and have things like voltage, temps, usage, all that on display. There's even like an audio visualizer, a few different settings for those if you're listening to music on your computer. In addition to just like the pure visual things like, putting on custom graphics and picking between their preset animations that they have already built into Armoury Crate. The backside has your USB-C port for charging using this wired, and then up top is also your tri-mode connectivity switch between using this wired, like I just said, over the 2.4 GHz connection or via Bluetooth, so the 3 different modes. But flipping it over is where it really starts to get interesting. Underneath, there's this magnetic plate that pops off to reveal 2 things: the slot to store the USB receiver, and this little paddle that says soft and hard. This essentially changes the feel when you're typing and gaming to a softer, flexible give during use to more of a firm bottom out on the hard toggle. Now to better understand what that even means and what's going on here, we have to take a look inside. And personally, This is when the board really started to blow me away once I saw the level of detail that ASUS went through to separate this board from the rest. Once all 14 screws are removed from the frame, you have access to the internals, and right away, you're met with the first thing that caught my eye: a silicone pad seated on the bottom of the case to minimize internal echoes and reverberations from the all-metal housing. But not only that, the pad has all these tiny rubber standoffs that perfectly align with the PCB for the hot swap sockets underneath, so anything that protrudes out from the bottom has this rubber column to gently rest on and have a slight give. Then printed on the inside of the bottom, you have this really nice design cover that notes like which ribbon cable powers what. Then you'll notice all around the sides are 7 of these levers, again labeled as soft and hard. All these move as one piece in unison when you toggle that switch underneath the board, so it's not just moving like one little part. The entire inside under the cover shifts up, and this actually works way different than I first thought. My first reaction was that this like shifts that silicone pad, but actually the pad has cutouts, so it doesn't even come in contact with this. Then I saw on the bottom side of the PCB are these tiny plastic sloped pieces that line up with the mirrored 7 levers on the bottom frame. What's happening here is when in soft mode, there is no contact. Both of those sloped pieces are just sitting in front of each other. But when you toggle on the hard mode setting, the bottom frame shifts up, coming in contact with the sloped pieces in the bottom of the PCB, so they're now perfectly aligned, which is closing that gap that was otherwise allowing all that internal flex. Also helping give it a softer feel are the internal metal leaf springs. The carbon fiber plate just rests on top of that and has this nice cushion to naturally bounce on when typing or gaming. These are what those extra rubber pieces that were included inside the box are used for, by the way. The plate also has flex cuts to it, so with it being carbon fiber, you get that rigidity in the sense where it's not gonna break, but it still allows for flex. And this is all in addition to the 2 pour-on foam inserts inside already, both sandwiched between the carbon fiber plate and the PCB to dampen the contact from the switches to the plate, and the other as a pad between the switches and the PCB. Again, the measures ASUS went through to provide multiple layers of foam, the really intricately designed silicone pad, the leaf spring gaskets, the toggling between the hard mode and the soft mode, it's just on a level that I've never seen before. And sure, some customs will go that extra mile, but those are all group buys with like 100 to 500 orders max. This is on a mass-produced gaming keyboard. All this talk and we didn't even get to the switches yet. They do offer 2 types, a clicky and a linear option. I have the linears with their refined NX snow switches that have improved factory lubing on these models. They actuate at 1.8 millimeters with 45 grams force and bottom out at 3.6 millimeters, and that box style stem combined with the medium height keycap set really give a nice tight tolerance to each keystroke. The factory lubing on these switches feels really nice and smooth. You shouldn't need to swap them out, but if you want to, you have the choice because as we know, it is a hot swap PCB. It is 5-pin underneath with a north-facing LED. Stabilizers here are also generously factory lubed, and while these are their own ROG stabilizers that combine like a cherry style and a co-star stem, they're tuned really well and they feel great for being stock, but you can also swap these out and use your own stabilizers, just like you could do on the previous Azoth. Then lastly to note, the spacebar has some extra TLC with these foam pads underneath to cut down on the hollowness, complementing the foam strip cushioning through the carbon fiber flex cuts underneath. Okay, so now we'll do the sound test with these NX Snow switches, everything stock, unmodified further than what ASUS already did. We'll do it both so you can hear the difference with the soft mode and the hard mode. Now, gaming with this at 8K wirelessly. While it's not a rapid trigger keyboard or anything, this higher polling rate does help it technically be faster by reporting to the PC every 0.125 milliseconds versus the standard 1 millisecond. And remember, you need to use that polling rate booster in conjunction with the 2.4 gigahertz dongle to enable the faster polling rate. And being transparent, I have gone on record in the past saying how 8K or even 4K on a keyboard isn't as crucial to your gameplay experience as it would be with like a mouse at a higher polling rate. But again, this is very clearly a premium keyboard, so they do give you that option. I didn't notice it slowing down my PC or racking up more CPU usage than usual when I was monitoring it. In fact, gaming at 1K and 8K really showed no difference during my tests. But if you have like an older system and your CPU struggling to play your games as it is, then you may notice that, the 8K setting is taking up more usage than you'd like. But all good on my end with no issues during gameplay. While the switches here aren't like a crazy speed switch, they do actuate and bottom out quicker than a traditional switch. So strafing back and forth and running to avoid getting hit in games definitely felt smooth and snappy. A really nice combo of all the materials in these lubed NX Snow switches. And by the way, I did use this primarily on the softer setting. So when I was, like running in game, I'm mainly bottoming out, and that flex is something that I definitely prefer over the stiff feeling that give you really no bounce. Although people may actually prefer the hard setting for gaming since that bottom out keystroke is more apparent. So my overall takeaway with the Azoth Extreme is this is ASUS's love letter to gamers out there, because just the extreme level of detail in every regard of this board is so mind-blowing. Again, it's so detailed and intricate, just the lengths they went. Even, all the nice printing and showing you what is what on that bottom cover on the inside of the frame, which 75% of the people won't even see or ever look at because they're not gonna wanna take it apart and mod it if they don't need to. It is just mind-blowing to me how well thought out everything is on this keyboard. Which leads me to probably the biggest downside is the price point. They went that extra mile in every regard because this is a $500 keyboard. Yes, I hear you. Sticker shock, absolutely jaws on the floor. That is a lot of money, regardless of who you are, how much you love gaming or keyboards. $500 is a lot. But you combine everything ASUS did in here, really blending that fine line between a custom gaming keyboard and a pre-built mass-produced keyboard, which this is, and there is nothing else like it anywhere on the market with both gaming keyboards and the custom seam. The battery life here is incredible. You can get about 2 weeks average if like the RGB and the OLED on. With that turned off, you can get around 2 months. Again, 8K polling rate, wirelessly, the OLED screen, the dial, what they're doing here has not been done before. So while $500 is admittedly not gonna be for everybody, what they did is so special and it deserves its own place on the market because this by far is the most premium gaming keyboard I've ever felt and got the privilege to use. My only other two minor complaints are gonna be, like I said before, I wish the font on the keycaps were more of a clean, minimal font, and the RGB overall is pretty lackluster. Not the effects, nothing like that, but just the lights themselves are pretty dull overall. I feel like I'm wanting it to go 2 more levels up for brightness when I'm maxed out on 100%. But honestly, I keep it a static color. At the end of the day, the RGB is not a big deal at all. So guys, that'll wrap it up for my review of the brand new ASUS Azoth Extreme gaming keyboard. Hope you all enjoyed. If you want to check it out, I'll have it all listed for you in the description down below. If you like this review, give it a big thumbs up to show your support. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at randomfrankp. And lastly, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Hope you all enjoyed. Have a good day.